Islam. I am Najib Safar L. This is a little response to Dane Calloway, his slander against Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Still talking crazy. Think he would have had enough when he dissed RB Bay Publications and Moors, but he ain't learned his lesson yet. So hey, y'all go over there and put him on blast, man.
Who was the first to say that so-called African Americans came from Africa? Now, there is absolutely no records nor any documentations in Africa right now or even in the past that clearly states that all so-called African Americans immigrated from Africa. The only few that have said this to be true are some of the descendants of the European colonizationalists currently residing in the Americas, along with the leaders of the Pan-African movement, leaders of the Hebrew Israelite movement, leaders of the Nation of Islam movement, leaders of the pro-black and woke movement, and leaders of the Moorish movement, in which all of these groups coincidentally derived during the early to mid-1900s, at a time when access to the World Wide Web didn't even exist. So who actually manifested the proof to these self-proclaimed leaders that so-called African Americans came from Africa?
Now people like this, they play on the intelligence of people. Like, if they know people just coming to their videos and listening to that shit and they ain't read, then they gonna fall for it every time. Now, if I'm not mistaken, in the Moorish literature, the prophet said this is not to be confused with any back to Africa movement. So what is he talking about? Like, I mean, yeah, you got Moors in Africa, you got Moors in Britain, you got Moors everywhere. So, I mean, what is this dude talking about? Shout out to Dr. Eileen Bay. He shared this out on Facebook yesterday because that what Moors do. They share the information and give you the reference to it. So this right here is page 374 out of ancient and modern Britons. And it said the Englishmen who had colonized the western shores of the Atlantic not more than a generation or two before Gross spoke of the Indians there as being as black as gypsies. In 1676, the native races of New England were spoken of indifferently as Indians and Moors, and our British Indians, quote unquote Indians, are also remembered as Moors. Therefore, Gross is virtually telling us that large companies of Moors or black people roam up and down the country rather more than 100 years ago, taking very considerable contributions from the farming classes and others, besides being possessed of many fierce and aggressive qualities. And these Moors, at that quite recent period, had not relinquished the custom that distinguished those black people against whom Caesar fought. Those 18th century Moors were also painted people. So this right here is showing you that the dark skinned people that they encountered, that they labeled Indians, were Moors. Wherever they went, the Americas, Britain, they labeled them as Indians, but they were Moors, the dark skinned people. Because that's what blackamoor means, dark skinned person. So, I mean, but he won't tell the people that, though. He just want to attack people. And then you got these dudes out here, they want to attack Taj and RV Bay Publication. This dude right here attacking the prophet, but you probably won't say nothing to him, though. Come on, man. Right here you have the proclamation put out by City of Atlanta Councilman C.T. Martin, and it states the Moorish Americans whose ancient forefathers are the mothers and fathers of the human family stand in these days as a community of descendants from the ancient Moabites, Hammatites, and Canaanites who were permitted by the old pharaohs of Kemet to traverse from East Africa and later form kingdoms extending from the northwestern and southwestern shores of Africa, the Atlantic islands, unto the present day continental Americas. Okay, now we're gonna go a little bit deeper. Why did he say the present day continental America? Because all the shit was one land at one time. Now, you can stay in that neophyte state if you want to, but this shit ain't about going over the stuff we thought we knew or what we might have learned in school. You supposed to go deeper into this stuff, man. Pangea, where all the continents or the big supercontinent thing. I'm gonna let my man talk to you right quick.
We know that new plate material is being formed, and these lithospheric plates on the surface of the Earth are moving around, and that might raise the question in your brain: what happens if we kind of reverse things? We know the direction they're moving in. What does that tell us about where they came from? So let's just do the thought experiment. Right now, South America and Africa are moving away from each other because of new plate material being created at the mid-Atlantic rift. Let's rewind it. Let's bring them back together. Let's bring them back together. We know that India is jamming into the Eurasian plate right now, causing the Himalayas to get higher and higher. What if we rewind that? Let's bring India back down towards Antarctica. Same thing with Australia. We have new plate material being formed between Australia and Antarctica that's making the continents move apart. Let's bring them back together. Let's rewind the clock. Even North America. It's not as obvious from this diagram, but if you actually look at the GPS data, it becomes pretty obvious that North America right now is kind of moving in a counterclockwise rotation. So let's rewind it. Let's rewind it into a let's go back, moving it in a clockwise direction. Instead of Eurasia going further away from North America, let's bring it back together. And so what you can imagine is a reality where India, Australia are jammed down into South America, into Antarctica. South America and Africa are jammed together. North America is jammed in there, and essentially Eurasia is also jammed in. So it looks like they're all kind of would clump together if you go back a few 100 million years. And based on just that thought experiment, you could imagine at one point all of the continents on the world were kind of merged into one supercontinent. And that supercontinent is called Pangea. Pangea. Pan for entire or whole, and Gea for coming from Gaia for the world. But all of the evidence tells us that Pangea existed about 200 to 300 million years ago, roughly maybe 250 million, give or take, years ago. And I want to be clear, this was not the first. This was not the first supercontinent. To a large degree, it's kind of the most recent supercontinent and it's easiest for us to construct because it was the most recent one. But we believe that there were other supercontinents before this. That if you rewind even more, that you would have to kind of break up Pangaea and it would reform. But now we're going back in time, or that there were several supercontinents in the past that broke up, reformed, and the last time that we had a supercontinent was Pangaea, about 250 million years ago, and now it's broken up into our current day geography. Now, I won't go into all of the detail why we believe that there was a Pangaea about 250 million years ago, or this diagram tells us about 225 million years ago, give or take. But I'll go into some of the interesting evidence. On a very high level, you have a lot of rock commonalities between things that would have had to combine during Pangaea. And probably the most interesting thing is the fossil evidence. There's a whole bunch of fossils, and here are examples of it, from species that were around between 200 and 300 million years ago. And their fossils are found in very specific place. This animal right here, Cynognathus. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Cynognathus. That this animal's fossils are only found in this area of South America, a nice clean band here, and this part of Africa. So not only does South America look like it fits very nicely kind of into Africa, but the fossil evidence also makes it look like there was a nice clean band where this animal lived and where we find the fossils. So it really makes it seem like these were connected at least when this animal lived, maybe on the order of 250 million years ago. This species right over here, its fossils are found in this area. Let me do it in a color that has more contrast. In this area right over here. This plant, its fossils. Now, this tries to connect a lot of dots between a lot of content. Its fossils are found in this entire area across South America, Africa, Antarctica, India, and Australia. And so not only does it look like the continents kind of fit together in a puzzle piece, not only do we get it to a configuration like this if we essentially just rewind to the movement that we're seeing now, but the fossil evidence also kind of confirms that they fit together in this way. This this animal right here, we find fossils on this nice stripe that goes from Africa through India all the way to Antarctica. Now this only gives us evidence of kind of the southern hemisphere of Pangea. But there is other evidence. We find kind of continuing mountain chains between North America and Europe. We find a rock evidence where, just the way we see the fossils kind of line up nicely, we see common rock that lines up nicely between South America and Africa and other continents that were at once connected. So all of the evidence, as far as we can tell now, does make us think that there at one time was a Pangea. And for all we know, all the continents are going to keep moving, and maybe in a few 100 million years we'll have another supercontinent. Who knows?
250 million year old piece of Africa found in southeastern U.S. Larger portions may still be discovered. These people already know all this stuff with one land mass, man. This ain't coming from no more. I mean, from what I can see, this guy named Philip Ross. So, hey man, they can keep playing games all they want to. The information out here though. Continental breakups are proven to be just as destructive as some human separations. Geologists say they have found a fragment of Africa embedded in the southeastern U.S., a remnant of the rift that occurred between the two continents some 250 million years ago. According to a new study published in the journal Geological Society of America, the fissure known as the Brunswick Magnetic Anomaly was created hundreds of millions of years ago when the crust of Africa and North America were yanked apart like stitches in a piece of cloth. Easy to find. Go right down the internet and look it up, man. These dudes playing games, man. All one people. All the dark skinned people on the planet Moors. Ain't no Indians and all that old shit. Not the dark skinned people. We Moors. So that's the Geological Society of America saying that. That ain't me. But you ain't gonna argue with them though. But you wanna keep throwing Noble Drew Ali and Moors on the bus. He just throw Nation of Islam under the bus, Black Panther, all that. He just throw it all us under the bus. So and y'all, that's who y'all support though. Man, come on, man. You better watch these sheep, wolves and sheep clothing, man. These dudes out here trying to get popularity and get whatever they can get out of people, man. They don't care nothing about the people. If you supposed to be a scientist, you supposed to dig, man. Go deeper with the information. He stay pretty modern with his stuff. He don't go back too far because he know every time you go back you gonna see more. I don't care what. Most of these books I look in, you got Moors in there somewhere. So he trying to separate the people, saying, "Oh, you ain't from Africa." I mean, technically, yeah, you from Africa, but not in the sense he talking about. If it was all one landmass at one time, yeah, we descendants of Africans. So that's the game they play, is to convince the people that we all different, and we don't have no ties back to Africa, and we got ties back to all the land because we were the navigators. I mean, chapter 25 in the Circuit 7 Holy Quran say, "Ye are the children of one father, provided for by his care, and the breast of one mother have given you suck. Let the bonds of affection therefore unite thee with thy brothers, that peace and happiness may dwell in thy father's house. And when ye separate in the world, remember the relation that bindeth you to love and unity, and prefer not a stranger before thy own blood." So I mean, so what is dude talking about, man? We separated into the world, whether we came from Africa, or came from Britain, or came from India, or Hindustan, or wherever our dark skinned, so called dark skinned people come from. We all one people. These people practicing separatism, man. I ain't got nothing against people from the continent of Africa or whatever. Like, I rock with them. They rock with me. If you real, they know you real. They'll tell you stuff. Like, and it ain't even on them to be telling you nothing. You should be trying to study this stuff for yourself. So I just feel like that video, it, I mean, it clearly was an attack on Noble Drew Ali and Moors, but that just attacked Asiatic people or Moors in a lot of different ways. Go back and look at that video and just listen to the way he talked. That's an attack on Asiatic people. So he already picked his side. You know, I mean, I ain't trying to sit on here and act like I'm a master teacher or none of that shit. I just had to do this in defense, cause I get tired of hearing these dudes, man, and I just can't sit back and let these dudes talk sideways like this. I couldn't do it on this one. This just a little tap on the hand. So, hey, man, I keep listening to all these folks if you want to, man. Uh, but see, that's why I rock with Moors. Motto for Moors is study, study, study. We don't be out here listening to all these folks just popping up out the blue, man. Pick up a book or something. Got these phones in your hand. Look up some information, man. Don't just think you're gonna get everything from a video. Peace, y'all.